Hey everybody, welcome to my chess stream here on lichess and Twitch. International Master William Paschall. We are already getting challenges here before we even started. Thanks for that, guys. I had a message. You can go ahead and send me challenges even before the stream starts if you want to, guys. Jobava Bador from Spain is challenging in the challenge area there. What do we call this here? Anyway, welcome everybody. We've got challenges from Sadist Troll, Shansha, Andrea Peroni was wanting to challenge. Normal blitz today, guys. No crazy openings. That was yesterday. We will do that on a regular basis if everybody enjoyed it. For some reason, I'm having trouble uploading the stream from yesterday to YouTube. I don't know why that is. Occasionally I have these issues just out of the blue. Twitch will, or YouTube will make it difficult for me. Hello comrade, says the Gladys Troll. Saddest Troll, Gladys Troll from Nepal. Shansha, Geese, Royal Python. All you guys are regular watchers, viewers here, and I appreciate it. If you guys want to check out my YouTube channel, where I was unable to upload yesterday's stream, it's video chess training on YouTube. Hope your Rowan is here to keep the real trolls out. And we're about to get started. I guess we'll start with the sad troll. Yeah, Andrea, go ahead and challenge me anytime. You can challenge me even before the stream starts if you desire. Challenge will remain in the list. So guys, good morning. It's Thursday the 15th of September 2016, in case you didn't want to know. What is up? Alright. I have a tendency to move too quickly on the first move in these chess 960 positions, so I want to take my time here. Crusader of Hope says, well, I thought I would be the first challenge of the day. Good morning, though. Gladys Troll says, I'm real. Wonder why he said that. Morning, Bill in chat. Alright, guys. So we've got the king on f1. That actually, you know, kind of feels like... I like this, actually. The bishop's on the long diagonals. And the knight's not in the corner. Rook and queen in the center. We're probably castling kingside and playing for fianchetto type setups. As far as establishing a pawn center, I would think either d4 or e4 looks really fairly viable. Maybe d4 because the rook is behind it rather than the queen. But I think you could play either d4, e4, or even knight c3. Although knight c3... I don't know, how are we going to develop this bishop on a1? Actually, no matter which pawn you move, you're going to have one bishop restricted by a pawn in the center. Alright, Sadist Troll with symmetrical response. Shansha. That emoji always reminds me of like a puzzle piece or something. Like, what's up with the puzzle piece emoji? And the love. He's sending me some love there. Alright. G3. Knight c3, kingside fianchetto. Lots of love, man. 7 challenges already, guys. Wow. Okay, these guys are all regulars. Then Asit Passes, who we have played, I'm not sure, a game or two against, 3-0. Theoretical Battle, who's here all the time in the last week. New viewer, Andrea Peroni. And M47, who also has played 2 draws against me. Alright. This isn't exactly the fastest development here if I play bishop g2. But he played b6, which is kind of ugly looking. But how are you going to develop this bishop on a8 otherwise? I'm probably going to have to do the same thing. So it's sort of inevitable that somebody's going to have to play b3, b6. Crusader says, thanks for confirming our suspicions about your state of being. He said, I think he's real too. Real what? He's real sad. Alright. Anyway, we're just going to castle. I think we got the copycat going on. If you don't know what to do in chess 960, it feels like symmetry is the way to go. Rowan says, hi, Bill. What's up, man? Okay, well, I couldn't have done any better myself, Satis Troll. We've got this kind of Catalan type of position. The knights are good on d3, d6. So we're hoping that Troll will break the symmetry at some point in a negative way for himself. Crusader of Hope says, I played M47 yesterday. He's a strong player. You have to win by confusing him. You mean my challenger? M477OC? Yeah, I can't really remember yesterday's game. The first day's game I remember. It was a Scandinavian where I was white, and he played a kind of weird move order in the opening. Yesterday, I'm spacing out on. We had a lot of interesting games yesterday because of the concept of playing unusual openings. Was really fun. If you didn't tune in, you missed something cool, because not necessarily every Wednesday, but once in a while we're going to be doing like an unusual opening stream. Very aggressive move. It feels like black is a tempo up or something. He's got pressure on the long diagonal. My pawn is pinned on d4. So I'd rather not play c3 to block my bishop further, but I don't know sort of options we have here. We could play knight c3. That would lose a pawn. That's not good. e3 is a bit weakening. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. But Senior Troll is creating some issues. Now, what if we continue the symmetry with c4? That's interesting. He's also pinned on the long diagonal. Only difference is that I'm castled and he's played knight to d6. Monk78. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm pronouncing it in a Hungarian way. Is, as you guys may or may not know, I live in Budapest, Hungary. Says, good morning, everybody. Good morning. So you're a European, fellow European. We've got, hopefully, Westerners from North and South America, where it's, well, it's open to interpretation whether it's morning or evening there. Morning in Europe, and I guess it's like evening, late afternoon in Australia. Asia Pacific. Okay, so e6. And I was thinking about playing e3 myself. I technically don't have to do anything because everything is protected, but he could increase the pressure with knight c6. Does anybody understand why it seems like we're much more likely to get a kind of closed position in chess 960 than in normal chess? Or is it just my imagination, or does it seem like we always get a closed game whenever we play chess 960? There is a possibility here to take on c5. I don't know why I didn't. I guess I'm still asleep. I've been awake pretty long, actually. I woke up in time today, so I don't really have this excuse, but still, it's always weird playing the first game of the day in the morning, and I never really like playing tournament games in the morning, to be perfectly honest. So We could take on c5, give up the bishop, and take on d6. And in order to recapture that pawn, he'd have to allow us to isolate the pawn on d5. This is kind of an interesting variation. It's very concrete. We give up the dark squared bishop, but we get a tangible, concrete weakness. We can inflict in black's position a tangible, concrete weakness. Same thing basically as CD, ED. The problem with this variations is going to be that later on I could have a weakness on the dark squares, and I'm running out of time. I've got to do something. Alright, let's just try it. I also could give him some play down the e-file. I mean, his queen is going to be active with this isolated pawn on d5. The structure where he's got an isolated pawn on d5. He will have some compensation for the isolated pawn based on active chances down the e-file. I'm deciding to do this basically because I didn't really see another plan, and I'm actually 2 minutes behind Troll in terms of the clock. So I'd rather find something concrete, a concrete way of playing the position where the plan is clear. In this case, we've given up a pretty serious positional advantage. I mean, the bishop pair, the unopposed dark square bishop, although I think it's somewhat limited what he can do. My king is safe. We've got no kingside weaknesses on the dark squares, so it's kind of hard for him to use that bishop to attack my king. There's a little bit of weakness around the dark squares in my queen side, which may not seem like a big deal, but he could invade those squares with his pieces later on, so that could be relevant. Crusader of Hope says, I'd rather play a game at 2 a.m. than 7 a.m. I agree, man. Always one of the hardest things for me was going to chess tournaments and playing that game at 10 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't seem to matter, how much you slept the night before. 0 or 8 or 9 hours. No matter what, it's always hard to wake up in the morning and play a serious game of chess. A lot of chess tournaments have the schedule that... a lot of tournaments have the schedule that... What is going on here? He just unnecessarily retreated the bishop back to g7. So that's a strange decision by black. I mean, nothing's going to trap your bishop on a1. That thing is, untouchable. Did not need to waste the tempo on retreating it. So he's going to leave me a pawn up. Very debatable. Looks like a totally unnecessary retreat. Anyway, so the typical chess tournament, will often have the last round in the morning. If it's a multi-day tournament, maybe players will be traveling, so it's always the brutal thing to play that last round or that last morning game. On the other hand, after about an hour, I find that I'm really, able to think very clearly. So usually we're a little slow here, but it's paying off later on. So bishop takes e5. Looks like we're just winning here. We've got this absolutely crushing passed pawn on d6. So Satis Troll with a very strange retreat move that he didn't need to play, bishop g7. We could have played it differently. We could have simply tried to win the pawn on d5. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, except for the fact that, my king is a little weakened on the white squares, but objectively, my feeling is that this is more certain than winning a pawn. I mean, positionally, to get a protected passed pawn on the 6 like this. Yesterday we were playing our last game, was the same kind of pawn chain, except on the other side of the board, or on the other, yeah, this diagonal. Yesterday we had a pawn chain like a2 to e6 yesterday. So a protected passed pawn on a 6 is worth like a piece almost. I mean, it's such a massive positional advantage. It should be decisive. Unless black could break up my pawns with f6, which, you know, is not easy to do. Got knight d3, f4. Here, we should always consider all the candidate moves. I almost just reflexively played king g1, but f3 should be considered. F3 should be considered. Then f6. And I can't play f4. So I think I prefer king g1 with the ability to move the f pawn. I'll see Paschall says, I think I might have retreated the bishop too because knight c3 and knight d3. Yeah, but you just have to get the pawn back. You know, worst case scenario, you give the bishop back for the knight on c3. You just can't afford to lose a pawn there. Let's play knight d3. The aforementioned knight to d3. Maybe I should have played f4 first. It doesn't seem like it should make a big difference, which I play first. f4, knight to d3. I think Troll, you know, theoretically his only hope would be to play f6, but it's going to weaken his own structure at e6. And that's why Nimzovich has this classic principle that basically goes that you should always attack the base of the pawn chain rather than the head of the pawn chain. So usually attacking the head of the pawn chain has some strategic ramifications that may be unfavorable. Like in this case, this is the head of the pawn chain, or closer to the head of the pawn chain anyway. It's going to create this weakness at e6 for him. And he would, you know, be better off attacking the base of my pawn chain, but it's so hard to attack the base of my pawn chain at h2, g3. How is he going to attack the base of my pawn chain? Like h4 or what? So practically difficult for him to effectively attack my pawn chain. f6 is the only chance. Now if I take, he can take with a rook defending e6. I don't have to take, but there is a bit of a question here. If knight c3, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, rook takes f1 check, queen takes f1, I drop the knight on c3. Thinking I probably have to take here. Not real happy about it, but I think, I mean, I can't let him take and have issues. Maybe queen d2, queen e2, knight d2. How about knight d2? Feels a little slow. Knight d2, take, rook takes f1, queen takes f1, and I drop the pawn on e5. Knight takes f1, then he goes to the f file with rook f8. He's got a little bit of compensation here. All right, so knight d2. I don't know, man. He's getting out of this. It looks like he's getting out of this. Because my king is somewhat open on the dark and white squares. Both diagonals, there can be checks. So it's very awkward. My only hope now is the better pawn structure. Looks like this pawn is dropping, and knight e4 walks into queen d4 check. I can trade queens. site update in progress. So Troll has won back his... Oh, maybe we're just gonna... Okay, we got our time back. Wow. I like that was smooth. We got 15 seconds extra time from everybody. From lichess. It's like Christmas. Man, knight f2. Knight f2. Surprise. I didn't even see it, Troll. Did not even see it in advance. Just lucky I had that move. Dropped his queen. Sometimes you just gotta be lucky rather than good. Did not see knight f2 in advance when I sacrificed that pawn, but it looks like it wins by force. Alright. Shansha, Geese, Royal Python, Aussie Passes, Theoretical Battle, blah blah blah. So, how to attack h2. Did you read my book, My System, and if so, what do you think about it? I never actually read My System. I read another book about Nimzovich's games, which basically, you know, I got all the information from, you know, his theories by directly looking through his games. When I was pretty much a beginner, maybe around 1400, I got this book, and it was in my library. Like, honestly, I appreciated Nimzovich really, I think, more through other players who adored his ideas. So, to be honest, I kind of indirectly learned Nimzovich from other players who learned Nimzovich, but I never actually really systematically went through My System, to be perfectly honest. Although I am a huge fan of the concepts that Nimzovich taught, and I'll always keep it very close to my heart. Shansha dropped down there. Okay. Alright, Shansha. So this is a tough player. I probably need glasses. Gladys Troll. No, I didn't see it either, man. To be perfectly honest, the retreat move knight f2 was something which, for some reason, I didn't even see it at all myself. But the longer you play chess, the more these kind of, how to say it, the little voice inside your head, sort of subconscious vision of the board, I would say. That's how, like, great chess players who were drunk can play so strong. Like Tal would play almost full strength when he was drunk. I think the subconscious ability to calculate, you just, it's so deeply ingrained that even if you're, like, inebriated, you can still see moves. There's a little voice inside your head that if you play long enough, it starts to, like, blunder check for you when you're not even there, when you're not even paying attention. Knight f2 somehow, right before I make my move, usually the little voice tells me, you know, oh, look out, you got that, or the piece is hanging. Saves me from blundering, like, seconds before I pick up a piece and move it. So you need to play a long time, thousands and thousands and thousands of games, especially, it's better if you start when you're younger, before you have this kind of, like, subconscious ability to save yourself. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, you know, that feeling when you make the move and you see the winning move for the other guy, the instant you touch the piece or the instant you make your move, that's the worst feeling in the world, isn't it? When you see the blunder, like, the instant after you touch the piece. And that's when your instinct, when your subconscious mind just didn't quite make the cut. Castles, queenside, yeah, so the story with this position is that we've had a lot of games. I've been working on this line since the springtime. Bishop d7 in the Rouser. It's not the first time I played it. I played it many years ago, and recently started playing it again. So the story here is that rook takes c3 is long established to be kind of like the main line, but I have played a number of games in the stream with this move. It's extremely well analyzed theoretically, and I feel like it's not good enough for black. That black is basically begging for a draw, if he can even get that after the best possible play for white. So we're looking for something better. Now maybe h6 is interesting, and we'll go to that next. But at the moment, I've been working on this move, e6. So we had a game the other day, 2 days ago, with this new account that's been challenging me, WGM Alexandra, which is a mystery. It played one very good game against me in this line, and yesterday it played a kind of not so great game, which I allowed a draw in. But anyway, so analysis here is basically that the established main line is, according to Alexei Dreyev and players before him, bishop c6 and knight b5. I think bishop c6, knight b5 in this position. Or bishop c6, h4. Whatever. Anyway, so we're working on this move at the moment. This is a move that's only been played in a handful of games. The other day against Shansha, I played knight d5, and that is another move that was played once by the Iranian Grandmaster Elsam Magami. So, yeah, he's asking me why I didn't play that. I don't really trust that, to be honest, Shansha. I wanted to play this this bishop c5. I'm not sure about knight d5. So I thought I was going to try this line today. We had a misunderstanding. He thought I thought that was the best line. Knight d5, I don't think so. I don't know, Shansha. I don't think that's as reliable. I really want to work on this, because the other day Shansha played a game against me where I played knight d5, pawn d5, queen d5, and I managed to draw against Shansha. But he had a clearly better move that I looked at. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board in that line. I don't know, man, that I have enough compensation in that variation. This is very similar here. This is the game that I played against this mystery account the other day, Alexandra, that I was talking about. And this concerns me, very much, this particular variation. I kind of misplayed it, encountering queen h4 for the first time against her. And black has this pawn indirectly defended because of bishop e3 check there, by the way. So this much is basically forced. And I think bishop e6 is best. We want to keep this pawn blockaded and defend e5, but this is the critical position. So against Alexandra, WGM Alexandra, I play d4, and I think that's a bad move. It's very thoughtless and easy for white to defend against it with b3, and my pawn on d4 becomes kind of weak. So my feeling is that black has to find an improvement in this position. And the problem is, you guys won't believe, by the way, what I thought about here as a defense for black. The other day I couldn't sleep, and this position actually was going through my mind. So I can't castle kingside, I get mated. And I can't castle queenside because there's a bishop on g5 and I've moved my rook to c8. But, one thing we have to consider here, as absurd as it looks, I thought, was king d7. This is pretty crazy. I mean, to play king d7 would be like a really amazing idea. To play king d7, king c7, and try to get the king over here to b8. So in my in my half-awake state in bed the other day, thinking about chess, I thought about this position. Could I play like king d7, king c7, king b8? But looking at the board for the first time, since I had this epiphany, I'm a little bit unsure if it could really work. Looks kind of crazy. It looks kind of crazy to say the least, but who knows, you know, king d7, c4, king c7, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn. Now a2's attacked, and I have time to play king b8. So what does he do? King d7, maybe bishop e4. And then I would have time for d4, followed by king c7. Is this crazy? Kind of crazy. I think this is crazy, but we have no other idea to try here. Why not try it? Worst case scenario, I lose a pawn. I mean, if Shansha had a computer or something, I'd be really scared of playing this move, but since he's a human being and he only has a limited amount of time, I thought this is just an interesting possibility. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe he finds a really strong answer. I didn't analyze it, you know, that deeply. But we looked at a couple of variations. It looks like it's possible. So if I get away to the queen side... Anyway, it makes for an entertaining game. Yeah, this is the experiment. It's looking a little crazy, but we only live once. Maybe we can find a better way to prepare it, you know. There could be other moves though. I mean, I could play something like maybe queen b4. Instead, queen b4, queen takes b4, bishop takes b4, bishop b5, check, king f8 with a better ending for white. And he doesn't have to exchange queens. If queen b4, he could play queen g3. So it's not easy for me to like force a trade of queens. And again, even that ending is pretty good for white. I would think queen b4 takes, bishop check, king f8, bishop b3 with the idea, bishop a4 with the idea of bishop b3. But maybe there's a way for me to hold the position. And the pawn on e5 is really weak in a lot of endings. So like the only game, well, this position is similar to the earlier knight d5 I talked about. I've seen a lot of games where the e5 pawn, basically black can be down a pawn, but in an ending, like trying to get the king to a safe position and hold on. Okay, so bishop c4. This is an interesting move, and we have a couple possibilities. The first thing I think I looked at was bishop f2 to try to go into an opposite color bishop position, but that's hardly a miracle cure. This is stronger than bishop c4 or bishop e4 because there I have d4. Here, if with d4 he has bishop takes e6 check, which seems to leave my king in a really... This looks like the critical move. Bishop b6. Bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5. c4. That looks pretty strong. King c6. We didn't quite make it where we wanted to go. after king c6. I did look at this variation. I think we're going to go with... We're going to try to bail out here. Aforementioned concept of endgame where pawn on e5 is weak. Maybe this is a mistake. Interesting. Very interesting. If I can trade queens and get into an endgame where his pawn on e5 is a weakness, I have a king on e6. Could be very defensible for black. But I think this experiment is going to remain an experiment. I just wanted to try it. Looking at the position, it looks pretty crazy. Admittedly. So he's actually had to use quite a bit of time. We're both down to under 2.5 minutes. Is this an April Fool's joke? No, you're not talking about this game. What about rook c6? Rook c6 in the earlier position was playable. Definitely might turn out to be a good idea. So I think rook c6 is something to consider very seriously. And now that is a no-no. Okay, we're reduced to blitz game. Bishop g3. I like that bishop a lot, to be perfectly honest. I really like it. It's my kind of bishop. Wow. Try to get some sort of counterplay. Got a good king. His pawn is weak. This is a bad bishop. Seems like black should have good chances to save this. Hoppa. Just hanging a pawn. Suddenly black is even possibly, I don't want to say better because he's honestly pretty well organized here. Bishop c5, take. I'm feeling generous. Maybe we're actually better here, but he's pretty active, so. All for a draw. Yeah, I guess I'm actually better, but it's feeling pretty random. Down to 1 minute. We better take the draw. Uh-oh. Maybe he's disconnected. I want to take my draw offer back. How can I take my draw offer back? Can I unoffer draw? Ah. Maybe they did away with that. You used to be able to on-off for draws. Okay, I feel like you were generous with me, Sean Shaw, not punishing me for king d7. So I'm offering you a friendly draw there. I think I was slightly better at the end, but we're both under a minute, so. Alright, man. In Hungarian, we call it barátságos, a draw offer. Friendly draw offer. But no, I mean, I don't think I'm winning. I think black is a tiny bit better. So I'm not giving away points or anything. Geese. No unusual openings today. Line seems to have less life than other Sicilians. A lot of exchanges in that variation. But, I mean, what I'm trying to do is prove the validity of it, you know, that it's even sound, because in some lines black is barely hanging on, theoretically. That particular variation is maybe the most critical test of the whole variation. So if I can defend that position, it's a success. You know, basically it makes the whole variation playable. And white has to look elsewhere for an advantage. Okay, geese, last time I made a very small inaccuracy in this Kalashnikov. But it's not the Kalashnikov. He plays the Lowenthal. Okay. Been a long time since I looked at this. And I don't remember the theory very well. So white has a whole bunch of moves in this position as far as I can recollect. Everything from queen d1, queen d3, queen d2, queen a3, queen c7. That's 5 candidate moves. And queen takes f6, of course, which is 6. So there's all these possible moves for white in this position. And it was years ago that I looked at this. I mean, as far as I recall, the ending isn't a big deal. Maybe black equalizes. And the main line is queen c7. But queen c7 is pretty complicated. And didn't look at that. Thinking, what works for me here? I remember seeing Alexander Ivanov, my old friend, play one of the queen retreats. Like queen, I want to say queen d2. Queen d2 is kind of like a scotch where you can play queen g5 sometimes. Black's plan will be queen g6 in some variations. And put pressure on e4. And actually there is a lot of similarity to the scotch there. People don't play this much. Yeah, I have a little bit of knowledge, geese, because there was a master who played this on a regular basis in my area. I saw Ivanov play him a number of games. And of course you do see it from time to time from specific players. If you play in a cafe or something where I used to play, this is a very popular opening with club players or cafe blitz players. It's easy to play. You know, endgame players like it because they get to trade queens. So it's actually not popular with tournament players, but I would think the chess cafe scene, the Lowenthal is still pretty commonly seen. But I don't remember theory too much. So what to do? Queen d2. Let's play queen d2 and see what's up with that. It's some disadvantage of the queen blocking the bishop on c1, but it's also a strength at the same time because I can play queen g5. So if we determine king d7 is good or bad, it's probably bad. Calidus. I don't really need an engine to check it, but with thinking with like down to 3 minutes, I said, okay, let's just try it. I think that we're going to see that it's probably bad. The odds are about 85% that it's not good. So knight on g to e7, and this is a huge idea for black, to play d5. And sometimes as a pawn sacrifice, to temporary or not, to get access to like f5 for the pieces, undermine white center. It's very obvious to play knight c3 here. I guess I have to. The problem is that sometimes knight d4, knight b4, and it's awkward to defend my pawn on c2. Maybe I have to play bishop d3 or something like that, which isn't really optimal. You caught me off guard. You really did caught me off guard here. Theory with the Lowenthal. I'm a little bit afraid because I know there's a lot of traps in the main lines with like queen c7 that I'm not real refreshed on. So that's why we decided to play this less common variation with queen d2. I'd like to see an endgame where I have the two bishops, maybe a tiny advantage. Queen g5. I was thinking queen g5, and then I looked and saw my c2 pawn. Not real convinced about queen g5. This is a defensive move, defending c2 and e4. It's obviously a bad bishop, but I don't think that white can be worse in this position. We're going to have to review the theory on this because I don't recall, like after queen c7, how the variation is supposed to go. I have to admit. That's the great thing about this line for black. Sound or not, not many people, including myself, really remember how white is exactly supposed to play. Mr. Practical. Bill, can you describe your thought process when you're analyzing with the board? Do you go through one line at a time? It really depends on the kind of position I'm in. You know, if we're talking about a very, very tactical position, I think you've got to stick to a more like Kotov-esque approach. Think like a grandmaster, analyzing trees of variations and stuff like that. But I think if you have enough time, it's not bad to just kind of daydream a bit at the board. Knight d5, knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, knight to d4. This is probably just a bad move. Because he's not going to play that. My pawn on the d-file is weak. And I can't support it with c4. I prefer knight e7 there when I have really big problems. I have to play d6 and probably fight for a draw. Although this may be not that different. Yeah, so Royal Python, it's you know, theoretically we're supposed to always analyze with trees of variations and very concrete, you know, systematic, looking at every candidate move in all positions. It's not really easy to do that, especially today with this faster and faster time controls, and certainly not in like a rapid game or a game like this. I think it's more intuition when you're playing a very fast time control. Bishop g5, queen g5. We've got problems with the pawn on d5, so I think black is good here. We do have the bishop pair. This pawn is going to fall, it looks like, if I'm not careful. He's put me in amazing time pressure here. 6 minutes to my 1. Pawn is very weak. Maybe I can play a4. On d6. Securing e5. You know, it just occurred to me that I have queen g5 there. But he has knight e7, which is probably his best defense. Letting me trade queens and just surrounding the pawn on d5. I could have played bishop e4 after knight e7. Yeah, well, bishop e4, it's a temporary answer, but I don't really like it on the long term. Yeah. If I have to concretely defend d5, I do have bishop e4 in some positions. I don't like my bishop blocked by that pawn as a defender, but ultimately, you know, it will help to defend d5. But I think that knight d5 was really not what I want to do with that position, so there has to be a better plan for white here. Maybe not, I don't know. There aren't a lot of active plans. I mean, f4 for white, but objectively white doesn't have an opening advantage, I guess, with the way I played it earlier. Queen d2 and bishop d3. I mean, queen d2 may be okay, but I need to find a very, very much better plan. Maybe the truth is, wow, b4. What? So he wants to play like knight d4. That's a cool idea. Very nice. Alright, so now we go with queen g5. Perhaps. Putting pressure on the knight while it doesn't have access to d4. I don't want the knight on d4. It would just give me no end of problems. If I can defend the d5 pawn with c4, it's pretty good for me. I think that's a much, much better situation. That's the one drawback of b4, is that he's giving me the ability to be able to play c4, defend the pawn with a pawn. You don't want pieces to have to babysit pawns. It's very important. I remember once I was playing the white side of Sicilian, and Nick DeFermian, who's obviously a great Sicilian and player against the Sicilian, e4 Fischer file basically, said to me, like, I think it was some kind of Kiri's attack or something, where I had a pawn on g5 that needed to be protected, and I decided to play rook g1 instead of h4, and he was like kind of surprised because it's in his mind it was more natural to defend with the pawn, and I always keep that in mind. We could play queen takes queen and bishop h6. Not really sure if this is good or bad. So we could checkmate him directly. When in doubt, just play for mate. No, he's got knight g6. It's going to take me a long time to play h4, h5, and you get him away from there. This is secure now. So I think that strategically white is clearly better. Bishop a6. This rook can also join the game laterally. Now we're looking at maybe g-file for black here. The one move cheapo. Threatening knight takes d5. Maybe it wasn't a threat because I had bishop e4. He could sack the exchange, something like that, but maybe it was just a kind of fake threat. All right. Have a lot of time, but these bishops should open the position. Should be able to open the position effectively for the white bishops. Also have a queenside majority. f4. Is there anything wrong with f4? Yeah, maybe. Let's just be patient here. Wow. Positionally, it's starting to look suspect for black. You had rook b7 there. Maybe it didn't matter, but frying pan into the fire. Picking up some key nuggets. So it worked out. We were able to hold on to the bishop pair and make the trash compactor go through. A little blockade here. Looks like he's got a little blockade on the position. We're gonna have to work to break it open again. Have to win it a second time. Whoa. Okay. Maybe I'll play h4 or something. He's cagey. Cagey defense. What's my plan here? It's going to take a while to break through here. Would you like a rook? Oh, he would. Wow. All right. I like these bishops. These bishops are pretty strong. Pretty and strong. He's just coming unglued here. All right, man. That was a long game. 53 moves. Thank you. Royal Python, Acid Passes, Andrea, M47, Guitar Player, Theoretical Battle, a new challenger, KD Patak, and WGM Alexandra. I don't know if we're going to get to those last games. There's a long queue. Cheapo alert. Could have played Bishop E4 after 97. Which position was that? I mean, you mentioned that earlier, didn't you, Python? I wasn't sure which position you were talking about. I can't recall now. So, the normal, regular Roy Lopez. And b5 can lead to either an archangel variation, where black plays bishop c5, or back into some kind of mainline Lopez. Maybe black wants to play the Marshall Gambit? No, he played d5. He would play for d5. So we're basically heading for a mainline Lopez here, which is good. I've been looking at some lines. If d4, bishop g4, that's a variation. d4, bishop g4, bishop e3, which has its own independent theory. Royal Python's like insta-moving. Queen c7. I had another game with Royal Python where I played d3. And now rook e8. I'm not sure if rook e8 is the main move there. I know that there's a lot of moves. Knight c6, bishop d7, bishop b7, c takes d. Not really sure rook e8 in this exact position. Maybe it's standard. Too many variations to remember, really, in this kind of line. So, indirectly putting pressure on e4. Wonder about b4. Occasionally you can play that kind of move, but here I don't think it's really good. I don't have the theory that well memorized in every variation. b3 is a move. Well, I've never really been a huge fan of putting the bishop on b2. More of a traditional player. I normally play knight f1 type plans. I think that's what we're going to go with. And, you know, at any moment, I mean, white can close the position with d5. Really depends on the situation. He's playing alarmingly fast. And his rating is going up. It's up to 2,000. This is classical. 2,099. Using 0 time. I like to think a little bit, and that's why I play classical time control. For me, chess without thought is not chess. So insta-moving is strange. Even if I know the theory, I wouldn't insta-move. I would want to look for new ideas. You know, that's why I'm kind of always disturbed when my opponent doesn't think at all. The big question mark for white to play knight e3 or knight g3, or even close the center with d5. I don't think that's usually that effective. If you close the center with d5 and try to do a kingside attack, usually black has bishop on d7, pretty good counterplay. Saving time to think later. Yeah, I see that. It seems like a slightly unusual. Knight e3 is a bit troublesome because black could play something like e takes d, c takes d, bishop f8, and put pressure on my e4 pawn. I'm not sure if that's an issue or not. If he takes on e4, I'd have knight d5. Maybe not even hanging. Then how do you develop the rest of your pieces in that line? Okay. Hopefully we get him out of book at some point by playing a second tier move so he's not in his preparation. This is an awfully logical move. I think knight g3 is more routine, but the knight is usually poorly placed there. In my experience, when black plays g6, which is very standard, the knight doesn't stand well on g3. And our only issue is really with the d5 square, controlling d5. Now, very quick move, rook c8. I'm not sure I really like that. We can play pawn takes pawn, knight d5 a la Alekhine. Simply and take with the pawn on d5. Perhaps it's not enough. Take, knight to d5, knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, putting pressure on the e5. What does black play there? Okay, let's try it. Very similar game played by Alekhine in the middle game series by Max Uva. Opening up the bishop on c2, putting pressure on e5, powerful protected passed pawn on d5. I mean, I don't know, it just seems like black is playing bullet chess. But saving time to think later, I mean, what's the goal? Like to get a bad position and then start thinking. Doesn't seem like a valid way to, a practical way to play. I mean, practical maybe, but you need to balance between using too much time, and it's not going to help you if you have a bad position and you have a lot of time. I think it's better to find a happy medium between, you know, blitzing and trying to find new ideas. I mean, I know a lot of strong players who will be in known positions and still use a fair amount of time. Welcome everybody to the chess stream. International Master William Paschall. We're playing on lichess as Sparkle Horse. You guys can check out my YouTube videos on video chess training on YouTube. We don't have any bishop takes h7 sacrifices, sorry. Unfortunately here. We do though. We have a problem, Houston. The bishop on d7 is an amazing defender. I think knight g5 is just strong though. And bishop takes h7, king takes h7. Knight g5 check, king g6 only move. And then something like g4. Man, that's crazy. g4. Alright. Unclear. But I'm just going to get blitzed and lose on time. I mean, it's interesting. This just looks bad for black. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's good for black. I don't think so. Looks like a promising position for white. You guys still there in the chat? Haven't seen Yeruin today. Yeruin, are you with us? Is he with us here? Knight c4. What? Strange game. I mean, bishop g7, bishop g5 with a clear positional advantage to white is pretty much what you'd expect there. So now we just have to play bullet chess while our opponent has 4 minutes in a lost position. But black should use their time. I mean, it's weird. I don't know. We've got increment. When the opponent has increment, you know, I don't recommend playing for clock. It should be like a second backup, a way of winning or whatever, but not the primary motivation is time. Trading pieces, I could simply take on f5 as well. In general, I don't think this is a good move either. Black is down the exchange and then trying to exchange pieces. Maybe f5. f5 and the queen can come across here to protect the bishop in the event of an exchange on h6. So I'm a little bit short of time. Maybe it would be better just to trade, given the opportunity. Guys, we're streaming till 12:30 Central Eastern summertime. Central Eastern, Central European. Somebody help me. I can't stop saying Eastern time. It's the problem with migrating from one time zone to another. Matter of fact, no one was here to begin with. I'd love to like click on the screen on my other laptop and see how many players are in the chat, but I really just have to I'm paralyzed here. I just have to move instantly. All right. We'll keep it closed. Clear exchange up. Should be no questions asked here. All right. We used a lot of time in the opening. Similar to the last game. I think the problem is that on lichess, a lot of players are just terribly addicted to playing ultra fast time controls, like 1 minute and 30 seconds, what have you. It's not good for your overall sort of slow time control play. It's very addictive. It's fun to play bullet chess, but I mean, if that's all you do, or that's what you primarily do, I think you're doing the wrong thing. If you want to improve, you want to just have fun, it's fine, but you need to take your time, and to move instantly in an 8-minute game, I think, sort of defeats the purpose. Black here has some solidity because the position's so closed. It's actually proving pretty difficult for me here. He's a full exchange down, but still has a fair amount of compensation. It's pretty impressive. I'm gonna need to be very careful. It's weird. I mean, it's like I'm up an entire exchange, and you wouldn't know it. You know, you feel like I'm down, 2 pawns for the exchange or something. really need to trade that set of rooks. So my other rook, or my rook, can really get in the game. He just has that. Totally unclear. I don't know what's going on here, but bishop h4, maybe black's winning. Bishop h4. It's like black's winning after bishop h4, d7. He can trade everything blockade. I bring my king up. Then his king comes up. My king takes. His king up, and then I'm fighting for a draw. I mean, maybe there's a draw there. So the time definitely plays a huge role. That black defended really well, but I don't think the priority here should be trying to get a time lead and then have me like mess up my position in time pressure. Try to play the best moves. Take your time. Let's try to get an interesting game. That should be the main priority, trying to play some good chess here, both sides. Asi is playing Scandinavian with knight f6. This is actually an old favorite of mine. And it's difficult to play this opening for black nowadays. And I played c6. That's interesting. It's a weird gambit. I've thought about this for black, but I haven't played c4. If this pawn was on d2 and this pawn was on c4, they were reversed, I think that's a very respectable gambit for black. But in this position, because I haven't played c4, I haven't weakened myself, I'm not backward along the d file, that it's a pretty sketchy sort of gambit for black. Now, I'm going to have to think quite a bit here, because we have a choice between bishop b5, knight f3, and c3, really. Bishop e3 would, I think, weaken my b2 pawn. I did see bishop b5 in analogous gambit lines, like e4, d5, e takes d5, c6, d takes c, knight takes c6, and then maybe knight f3, knight f6, bishop b5. The move d4 perhaps changes the position a little bit, because black has the pin bishop g4, putting more pressure on d4. I don't know, knight f3, the problem is bishop g4, then I play maybe c3, then he plays e5, and it feels like black has a little bit of compensation. You still lose on time, but you probably had a winning position for the first time in the game when you lost on time, or close to it. If it's not winning, it's very close. But I mean, it's okay. It's like 7-4, but it felt like just a random blitz game. I'm at a huge time disadvantage. and it's not fun. Now this is a very bad move by black. You play this active gambit and then not to develop consistently with bishop g4. You must play bishop g4. I don't think there's even another move in this position. E5, maybe as just a full-on like second pawn sacrifice or something, but other than e5 or bishop g4, or maybe bishop f5, you have to play some extremely active move to try to justify such a sacrifice of a pawn. So now white's just totally winning. Maybe I have to be a little bit wary of my king side, bishop d6 and queen c7 attacking my king side. I don't think it's going to be an issue. So yeah, e6 is really a big mistake. I'm going to choose to play c3 here, kind of shield my d4 pawn and perhaps give me the ability to play bishop d3, which would be a more active means of developing my bishop, because bishop e2 looks kind of normal, but it's rather passive. I don't have like active play along the e file. I'd rather play bishop d3. I could play bishop d3 right away, but nevertheless this pawn will need defending at a later date. Bishop d6, and like he's going to play e5 later, but he'll have lost the tempo in the process, so it's really not good enough. This may look strange, but I have this ability to play knight c4 at some point, and I maybe can do that with sort of tempo on the bishop on d6. I'm still waiting to decide where to put this bishop. I was thinking d3, now I'm thinking maybe not. Maybe we will just go conservative. And it's even viable to consider like g3, where my king side would be pretty solid. It looks like a c3 Sicilian where I'm just up a pawn for nothing, and black will eventually try to break with e5, but at the cost of a full move. Isn't e6 the Icelandic gambit? Well, I think that we have to treat it as learning experience, Python, and not be results oriented. That's how I think we should view it. Knight c4, clamping down on the e5 break. Possible this could go back to haunt me. Maybe he plays b5. That's a sort of weakening move for black. Guys are saying, when is he going to castle kingside? Probably next move. Unless I want to take a timeout to play a4, sort of securing my knight on c4. It's worthy of consideration. a4. Let's do it. I like it. It's a very c3 Sicilian-y kind of move. We're securing the outpost for the knight on c4, and then we get on with our kingside development. It would be a pretty normal position if black weren't down a pawn. If there were like a pawn on c5, it would be a standard kind of c3 Sicilian. But inconsistency, I'm like picking him apart. I don't mean to be like berating black's play, but I try to treat the stream as a means of teaching, and if you ever, feel like I'm criticizing you guys too much, just say, hey man, you're hurting my feelings. But don't be sensitive. As I said, I think it's like more important, as I was saying to Royal Python, that the stream is about everybody, including me, learning from these games, and not to be results oriented. I think Saddest Troll is 49-1, a negative score against me. If he wanted to have probably 40-10, he probably could, but instead he, I think, views it as a learning experience. So whether you win or lose on time shouldn't be more important than learning from the games. But a lot of us forget, it's fun to win. And now knight d5, knight f4. Very well. I don't think I'm going to weaken my king side. It's tempting to play g3. Should I play bishop d3 or bishop e2 here? This feels more active to play bishop d3. Willing to sell you a bishop. Quote-unquote bad bishop. Clear pawn up. You have to navigate chess positions like giving one advantage up for another one, exchanging one advantage for a different kind of advantage. Like in this case, Asi can put a knight on f4. I'm not going to live with a knight on f4. Bishop takes f4. I'm going to give him my bishop, my advantage of the bishops, or whatever you want to call it, in exchange for getting rid of a dangerous piece on my 4th rank. Most of my pawns are on dark squares, so if I'm going to get rid of a bishop, or going to have to exchange a bishop, then this one on c1 is the one that I want to part with, because the other bishop is really important in that I need to be able to defend the white squares in my position. There's a lot of weaknesses on the white squares because most of my pawns are on dark squares. So you can afford to give up the bad bishop, quote-unquote bad bishop. It's actually not a bad bishop, really. It's got quite a good diagonal. Here we could consider g3 now. I could have played it the previous move, in fact. I mean, it slightly weakens my king side, but again, you have to kind of balance out development versus weaknesses, and so he has a good attitude. Critique is well deserved. Yeah, e6. I mean, you're making a very dramatic sacrifice of a pawn in the opening, and that's a serious investment. So you've really got to be consistent and play ultra sharp moves to try to justify that pawn sacrifice in the opening. If you don't follow up with a super aggressive sort of plan, then it's not really justified. Again, don't get tempted by this bishop takes h7 check kind of idea. After king takes h7, knight g5 check, king g6, as in the last game with Royal Python, is a defense, plus black can play. Actually, that is really the best defense, because I have a fairly decent resources after knight g5 check, king g8, queen h5 maybe. So don't get tempted by that. First of all, e5, we just take here, I think, and I don't see black really having enough threats to generate any serious counterplay. You're an I am and I like to stream. What's that? The players keep on talking about the positions. I could capture either way with the pawn or the knight there. Black wasted too much time. And I think we're probably going to win more material. We're up 2 pawns now. If he can't regain the pawn on e5, that's more than enough. Generally speaking, like 1 pawn isn't necessarily enough to win a game, but to be up 2 clear pawns is completely decisive in most cases. So this may be not a stupid move. You might be thinking, why did he not take back the pawn? But in fact, after bishop takes, pawn takes, Rook takes e5, I have c4, and his queen is unprotected on d8, so if he moves the knight, I'm going to play bishop takes h7 check and win his queen on d8. So it's very possible that black, in fact, couldn't recapture that pawn on e5. Welcome everybody to my chess stream. Thank you for Guitar Player, and who else is here? Justice Bot is here. I didn't see Jeroen today, our other moderator. Did anybody see him? Justice Bot occasionally joins us. It's quite late for him, I think. Although actually, he's on the left coast of North America, so it's not that late out there. It's kind of not a bad time if you're a late night chess player on the West Coast to watch my stream. It's not too unreasonable. F4, game over. So not really sound, guys, to play the Scandinavian and a second pawn sacrifice with c6. It's not. This is not the Icelandic gambit. Somebody was talking about the Icelandic gambit. Icelandic gambit is when white plays like e takes d, knight f6, c4, and then black sacks a pawn with e6. Slightly different position. But if white doesn't play c4, you can't really do these gambits because white doesn't have a kind of backwardness on the d file in the opening. I didn't play c4. I didn't create a weak d4 square for myself or something like that. So the gambit ideas aren't really possible. You should recapture back on d5, either with the queen or the knight, obviously. Not going to be playing on lichess anymore, unless the computer cheating is solved. Well, to be honest, Justice Bot, I would think the computer cheating would be rampant everywhere. But it's possible that it's worse here. Yeah. All right, Andrea Peroni. We've got Andrea, M47, Guitar Player, Theoretical Battle. We'll see how many games we can play. We've got 50 minutes left. Just do what I do, Justice Bot. Play unrated games. E4. All right, guys. Let's try e5. I'm not really a native e5 player, as many of you may have realized. But I have played it in isolation before. And a long time ago, I started to play the Petrov defense. The problem with the Petrov is that it's kind of defensive. Very difficult to play it for a win. So I started to work on thinking about playing knight c6. We're in the very early stages of really trying to learn to play knight c6 as an adult, so to speak. Okay, bishop c4. So black's best moves are either bishop c5 or knight f6. There's really no other option. You could play a passive Hungarian defense with bishop e7. Playable, but passive. White has like d4, d5 with a space advantage at the very least in those lines. And I'm not a really big fan of playing the black side of the Evans and things like that. So normally I play knight f6. No thanks. Chess.com. Man, I didn't really feel like chess.com was free of computers. The few games that I've played there, I think I've had a pretty suspicious handful of games myself. I seriously doubt if any chess site is really doing a good job policing computers. So knight to c3, knight takes e4. This is the best theoretically for black. You could play other moves though. Bishop c5. Symmetrical. Maybe that's the only other really good move. No, bishop b4. What would bishop b4 be? Bishop b4 would allow knight d5, and I would think that would be a good line for white. Anyway, so knight takes e4 is clearly the recommended move according to theory. We had a game in this last week or the week before. Yeah, Italian opening or Gioco Piano. d4. That's interesting, but not recommended because, I guess, because I can play knight takes c3 and d5 with tempo. I'm sure that there are a lot of possible lines here. But knight takes c3 followed by d5, and then white has to play bishop b5. White seems to have a little bit of compensation for the sacrificed pawn there. e4, knight e5. And then what do I do? Bishop d6, knight takes c6, pawn takes c6. I don't want to sacrifice the exchange. We could play knight to d6 here as well. Kind of a weird move. It looks fairly solid. Let's give it a try. I'm in unexplored territory here. This looks like a solid move for black. A bit passive. It blocks my d-pawn. d4. I mean, there's a lot of candidate moves for black here. Bishop to b4, knight takes c3. Pawn takes d4 looks really kind of dangerous. But it could transpose to like a main line, I guess, after knight takes e4, d5. Some sort of weird bishop d3. This starts to look now like white went astray. So instead of bishop d3, I think you have to find something better there. Looks like it could just take on e4, or sorry, d4, and I don't see white having that much. Pawn takes d4, knight d5, bishop e7. Maybe white has some kind of crazy stuff like pawn takes d4, knight d5, bishop e7, castles. I want to say knight takes e7 check, queen takes e7, bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7, knight g5 check, king g8, queen h5. Threatening mate on h7. Even that wouldn't work, would it? Yeah, it would work. I can't go to queen e4. But again, on that line, I do the king g6 thing, and it doesn't look like enough. Another possibility is knight takes d4. kind of, what is it called, Belgrade Gambit type of idea. Thanks for the support. I don't know that I'm not supporting you. I hope you don't feel that somehow. I support you 100%, Justice Bot. Just don't know what to say, man. Knight takes b5 and bishop check. I just say what I think. I think that computer cheating is universal on the internet, not really restricted to one site or another. Queen e7 check. Bishop takes. Maybe just castle here. I'd like to trade pieces, but it helps him develop. It helps him develop. Otherwise, my bishop sort of hung out on b4 though, so he can't castle. That's a long-term disadvantage, and I get to castle now. And despite him getting a tempo with his rook, it's still a big problem with the king on f1. No, he's legitimately thanking me for my support. Oh, I didn't know I supported him. I just tried to say that, you know. Well, I'm glad. I thought he thought I wasn't supporting him enough. But he's got my support. So it's really hard to understand the context of comments people make in the Twitch chat, like, with very little time. I'm always like getting it out of context, but I wasn't sure if I was misunderstood or something. Okay, so he's buying it. All right. Queen takes d2. I wanted to castle. I'm having second thoughts about being greedy here with c5 and like bishop e6. But seriously, this is a really important pawn on d4. If I just castle, he wins that back, and I have a relatively useless extra pawn. And if I play c5, I'm up a lot of pawns. I can interpose bishop e6. I think this is stronger than simply giving the pawn back on d4. Andrea, much like our previous opponents, nobody likes to use their time. Everybody likes to play very quick. This is something I noticed years ago playing in Chess Cafe for money. The mark of really strong, oftentimes, not everybody, but many very strong blitz players, when they started to understand that it's okay to use time. In fact, it's good to use your time. And to learn to accelerate when you really need to, but to balance like finding the best move with using, not getting in really vicious time pressure is kind of an art form. I feel like you guys need to put a little more emphasis on trying to play the best move and a little less emphasis on trying to play as fast as possible. And that's, as I said, it takes a long time. A lot of guys who are playing master or expert strength blitz would like just never learn that time isn't enough. You have to try to play the best moves. And with increment, I'm talking about without increment. With increment, there's no question about it. you're not going to flag anybody competent with increments. So take your time. Time is the first. Time is the second priority. I'm giving this huge lecture, then I'm like, time is the first priority. Great. Sounds stupid, Bill. Alright. Anyway. Lecture finished. We're going to the end game with a really sweet 2 pawns up. Better structure. Yeah, he's got isolated F pawns. So you can take your time to the grave with you. Tempting not to take. If I take, he plays rook c1, picks that guy off. If I don't take, I remain with this protected passed pawn. Maybe it's better just not to take. It's an extra pawn. I can't hold it after rook c1. I don't know. Just too quick for me. Oh yeah. I used to be a little bit quicker than I am now. So f6, vitally controlling e5 and g5. I don't know, this we'll have to look up. It'll be interesting. d4 in the opening is a move that I'm really not familiar with in that position. Castles is a really well-known pawn sacrifice. But d4, he left me a little bit confused. That's the problem with not being a lifetime e4, e5 player. I don't know a lot of fundamental stuff that somebody who's been playing e4, e5 for like 30 years would know like cold. Probably a move like 5d4 is very elementary to a lifetime double king pawn player. Gladys Troll doesn't have a priority. I just see a lot. I would see a lot of blitz players overvalue the importance of time again and again and again. It's a very common theme. I'm not talking about tournament chess here. I'm talking about like blitz for money or whatever you want. Concretely, just about blitz. The weaker players tend to overvalue the importance of the clock. h5, maybe kind of stopping this king g4 runaway if I pin him type of idea. And it's over. Game over. You can still continue. You don't have to lose a piece there. Time flies when you're having fun, right guys? It's already 11:55. We have just 35 minutes left in the stream today. But don't fear, because we're going to be back tomorrow with another Blitz and Classical stream. No way I'm going to play all 7 challenges I have. M47 Guitar Player and Theoretical Battle are up next. That will probably do it. Unless one of the games is really super fast, which happens occasionally. Your farewell classical. Well, I think that Justice Bot should, if he's gonna quit and he's made up his mind he's gonna quit, he should go out as the classical champion. Nick's called Malats. I needed to modify it. Malats like pig. I'm just reading it in phonetic Hungarian. DWZ Okay, your German rating 1720, no FIDE. It looks like you're writing Malac, which is Hungarian for pig. Piggy. Our game will be super fast. You know a forced maiden. Forced maiden 69. That's a lot of moves. That's going to take some time. Thanks, William. I will beat you one. No, I am challenger. What's up, Malac? Malac got 2 draws against me. Yesterday's game, it was that game. Okay. That was the weird birds opening I played. Yesterday was unusual openings, wacky Wednesday, theme, blitz and classical. So I got a weird position against Malac. And actually he was better at some point. Then at the end he was slightly worse, but probably it was a draw. He's played 2 very good games thus far, I thought. Oh, theoretical battle was ahead of you in the list. Okay, it's okay because he's already, he's still going to get a game today. The bottom 4, though, probably have to wait until the next stream. If you guys do lose your challenge, try to refresh the page. If that doesn't work, just let me know in the Twitch stream. So he has just 3 rated games. D3. I had a game with somebody recently who played this 2 weeks ago, and I think I played D6 and Bishop F5. In general, it may be more flexible to play Knight F3. E3 is interesting. That's a variation that I used to play. Sirawan and a lot of players have played this. Bishop takes C3 is dynamic, but I'm not sure it's necessarily good for black. I surprised Mark Quinn, and I am from Ireland, once with that. And also Rook B1 looks like another reasonable move. So, I mean, I'm a big-time English player. Big time. I mean, for an IM, I'm pretty frequently playing the English with white myself, so I've experimented with pretty much every kind of different setup with white. We were all the spring playing a lot of Knight F3, C4 with white, and but D3 has some independent significance, I guess. It shouldn't be dangerous for black. Taco Tuesday. There's taco trucks on every corner. Even in Europe. Bishop G4. So, I don't know. Bishop F5 is... This particular... You said you went to Europe to get a GM norm. I never got a GM norm. The closest I ever came was like a half point short. And then after many attempts, and nevertheless remaining perpetually under 2,500, I started playing online poker. Okay, so here B6 allows 95. I almost forgot about that. Queen D7 is a variation I have played quite a bit. So I think that I have my own personal issues which might have prevented me from getting to GM, which I don't really want to go into on the stream. We all have our excuses and our problems in our lives, but I think the bigger thing was getting really into online poker and devoting the years where I really could have maybe made it to GM into into playing full-time online poker between 2009 2015. Played very little chess. Now d4, that's instantly played d4. That's a weird concept. I mean, to play d4 just like that, I have to take, I absolutely have to take here. Why would Mullets play d3 then d4? Snap. Snap call, snap move, d4. Now obviously he can't be sacrificing his queen or something. So he's going to play like knight takes d4. Bishop takes d4. Bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, queen takes d4. Or is he going to play like knight b5? This is weird. Maybe it was a mouse slip. Did you mouse slip? If anybody makes a mouse slip, we have take back here. It's an unrated game, and I mean, if it's an obvious mouse slip, we're obviously going to give people takebacks, as we expect them to for absurdly obvious mouse slips. Svidler told me recently he plays poker, but prefers stud in Omaha. These guys have to be careful. I mean, I think that Grishuk, to a certain degree, maybe did what I did on a worse, on a higher level. I don't think I would have devoted 5 or 6 years of my life if I was like an elite chess player as strong as Svidler or Grishuk. I think that Grishuk honestly may have made a mistake. I mean, he was awfully close to the top maybe 5 in the world if he improved a little bit. And apparently he really was heavily into online poker. So I think that's, in my opinion, kind of weird. For a medium strength, I am like myself. To take a break from chess is not a big deal. But for a Grishuk, I think that's a dubious decision, honestly. Svidler, I didn't know about, but did I watch the Olympiad? Yeah, on another topic, the Olympiad. Now there's some people are complaining about the tie-break system that the United States won against Ukraine. I'm not like a nationalist or something that I wanted to see the U.S. win because I'm a huge fan. Those guys are good players and they deserved it. Some people are talking about the tie breaks in the Olympiad. But honestly, I mean, the tie break system has been and was, obviously established and posted, and nobody complained about it until it was over. I saw like on ChessBase, Danny King is criticizing the tiebreak system, but if you have a problem with the tiebreak system, I mean, the time to complain about it is like before the tournament is over, not after the tournament's over. But I feel like the U.S. deserved to win. I mean, they didn't lose a single match, and Ukraine did lose one match. Knight to b5. It is kind of weird, though, how the final result is determined by a totally random match. In this case, it was Germany. So a game and a totally random match decides like which team will be the winner of the Olympiad. Knight b5. So do we want to play e5 here? I'm thinking no. I prefer to develop my pieces. I need to guard the long diagonal. But this is a very incisive, maybe too radical plan by white. I mean, what is his plan there? Like, knight b5, e5, e3. I looked at that and I thought, well, this does look a little bit weird. But I don't think an average player would find that kind of pawn sacrifice. I guess he's just kind of making it up. But it looks valid to me. This looks like a valid way for white to play. Yeah, but maybe the future tiebreak should be changed. But these are very hard to say. I'm not an expert on Sonnenberg tie breaks and stuff like that, so I don't know. I'll leave it to the chess officials and politicians to decide, or maybe the players. But I feel like it was a deserved victory for the U.S. Ukraine played well, but not losing a match in an 11 rounds team championship seems very impressive to me. Knight takes c6. Bishop takes c6. Threats? No, there's no real threat here necessarily. I'm just not sure if I want my queen drawn off to b7. Knight takes d4, bishop takes b7. There's a great variation, by the way, like knight takes d4, bishop takes b7, knight takes e2 check, queen takes b7, and then knight takes d6, winning my queen. So black here needs to be aware of the need to develop. Need to develop the pieces. Another idea might be queen a4 in some positions. But Malitz is again playing a good game. I think three interesting games thus far. This game is not the shortest one in the world, so we're probably going to play 2 more maximum. Guitar player, theoretical battle. I think we lost somebody. Did we lose somebody? Who did you say was ahead of you? Oh, theoretical battle. Okay. Yeah, my YouTube channel, Guitar Player, just mentioned it in the Twitch stream. I appreciate it if you guys check it out. If you guys go to my coaching profile on lichess, you can also see a couple sample videos I did. But I've been doing chess commentary all along since going back to 2003. I mean, I worked for chesslecture.com. I worked for ICC as a commentator. Actually, that was one of the most fun commentary assignments we ever did. I like doing the Olympiad because with the Olympiad you get to see a lot of, not everyday players. It's not always the same elite group of players you're talking about. It's kind of fun. The only problem with the Olympics, I think, the Chess Olympics, is this, however many teams there are, 90 players, 90 teams or something like that. I want to say 90 in that range. 11 rounds is a little bit the situation where you can get some weird matches at the end where teams are playing other teams that aren't really in contention. That's bizarre. The one drawback, maybe 9 rounds or 10 rounds would be enough. Maybe 11 rounds is too much. So standard plan here in this setup for black, try to trade off the king's bishop. That sounds really old school. You try to trade off the king's bishop and make sure not to use descriptive notation. Dating myself with this very old. Which rook do I want to use? Maybe I need the A rook there. This rook's doing nothing here. So we'll get him to the F file. It's like an accelerated dragon. A6. Maybe check. Check first. It might be mate. It's a very funny joke. But white is still hanging on. I'm wondering. We don't have any way to displace the knight on d4. d5 is looking like a good break. Go with it. d5 here. Really can't be a bad move. If he weakens himself with f4, that should probably favor black. Not too concerned about that. But we need to break down this bind. The Marazzi bind. He's got half a Marazzi bind. And then I thought c3 is interesting. No knight c3. a6 first or later. You want to play a6 first, get you out of my territory. Get out of my position, Mr. Knight. And black is just a tiny bit better. What was the opening in English? Symmetrical English. So I could take back on d5. I don't think I really want him to play e4. Now knight c4 is a no-no for structural reasons. And I can play b5, which would sideline the knight on a3. So black has an advantage. But obviously white is not lost here. Bishop b2 and white's still in the game. Well, it's lost on time. Alright, good game. A little bit better black there. Maybe I'm close to winning. We have some tricks like knight f4. But if we're facing bishop b2, it's not that easy to get in any kind of tactics. So theoretical battle and then guitar player, and that'll probably close it out for today. Alright, theoretical battle. If it's a really absurdly long game, it'll probably be the last game today. I don't want to go like till 12:45. d4. I want to work on a YouTube project today. If anybody has any suggestions or comments, they're always welcome. You guys can also contact me via my email, which is actually on the YouTube info and on my Twitch page as well, but some people don't notice. It's videochesstrainer@gmail.com. Yesterday I had a comment in one of my YouTube videos that they wanted to know what my email address is. And knight f3 kind of forcing me to go into a normal King's Indian here. We had a couple of Nimzos against theoretical battle. I don't think I played a King's Indian against him. So if you click on the info tab or the more tab on YouTube, you can see my email there, but some people don't know to do that. Classical King's Indian. You're the grand finale. Last time I heard anyone use descriptive notation was in that Sherlock Holmes movie. I love the descriptive notation, but it makes me make mistakes when I'm playing over games. I'm kind of experimenting with some different stuff, and this is one of the setups that, though objectively not really the best for black, it creates original positions, makes white think for themselves. So we play kind of like Peart's defense type of setup here. White reflexively played a4, which is not a bad move, but it's also not the most flexible approach. I would probably, with white, prefer something like rook b1 or maybe a3 to meet b5 with b4. Because here black has pretty easy play normally with the dark square, kind of just playing for the dark squares. after a5. It's not like white is worse after playing a4, but you lose a lot of flexibility in your pawn structure. So in that position, I think you could try a really sharp continuation like e5. Maybe that's critical, you know, or something. But a4 seems like a5 black has slightly improved chances because of the b4 square, and just kind of white giving up a little bit of control of the dark squares. Maybe rook b1, maybe e5, maybe a quick developing plan like bishop f4. But I don't really like a4. It's not a catastrophic mistake. Five-pawn storm. Not anymore. There will be no five-pawn storm. I mentioned this earlier, but it's an old book that's out of print. But Andy Soltis, who's an American GM, he's not that well known. He wasn't the strongest GM in the world, but he's still around. He writes for the New York Times. He's getting up in age, though. I mean, he must be around 70, I want to say, or close to it, if he's not. He was really big in the King's Indian and also played modern defense really well. And he has a lot of interesting games in his book Confessions of a Grandmaster, which was published, I think, around 1990. It gives you a lot of insight into modern defense and King's Indian structures where you play like a6 and d6 and c6 and flexible, creative kind of setups for black. I'm honestly I'm not a big fan of the classic, you know, e5, castles, knight c6, d5, knight e7, the Mardel-Plata variation. There's really not a lot of room for creative play in those kind of lines, in my opinion. So I much more prefer to play slightly offbeat variations as black in the King's Indian. Maybe e5, e takes d, a setup like this, knight a6, which even became a main line in its own right. And here black will focus on controlling the dark squares, which is second nature to me because I also play the accelerated dragon. There's something to be said for like a repertoire where you're fianchettoing in both of the major, against both of the major first moves. You play the dragon or accelerated dragon against e4, and you play a King's Indian against d4. Theoretical battle now playing bishop e2. So I think this is the situation where we can't let him play this, overrun us with a four pawns attack. So I'm going to play e5, because c5 isn't something you can really do in tandem with a5. That would terribly weaken the b5 square. I'd like to see the bishops, the dark squared bishops, exchanged in this position, and to play an ending or a middle game with white having weaknesses on the dark squares. Here we have to be a little bit careful. There's nothing wrong with, I guess, knight to c5. If he gives up the dark squared bishop, we end up in a really weird position where probably it's kind of hard to say who's better, but I'm inclined to say it's not white if he gives up his dark squared bishop there. So that's one option. The other option is he's threatening pawn takes pawn and win my d6 pawn. So the other option is defending in some way d6 and then developing the rest of my pieces. Looks Looks a little more appealing to me, but we have to be careful how we do this. He's got queen b3. This pawn might come under attack in some lines. So queen e7 might be the better square in usual situations, but in this particular one, knight queen b3, still I have knight c5 there. That gets pretty bizarre. Queen c7, what I'm trying to say, it's not a great square for the queen, and I rarely, if ever, put my queen on c7 in the King's Indian. But if there's ever one position where I do it, it's probably something like this. Maybe not so good after all, though. He just played queen d2. And the plan is to play knight a6 and knight c5, but I'm afraid it's too slow. I'm afraid it's just too slow. So we're going to have to play rook e8 and defend the d6 pawn with like bishop f8, it looks like, which is very passive. This will discourage f4 a bit, hopefully. This pressure down the e line. White very methodically. No more f4 power. Could have thought about the other rook. Though f4 was a debatable break in general. So the basic philosophy here is that, you know, we're willing to suffer with a bad bishop temporarily until we can find a better means of defending d6. He could do some crazy sacrifice with c5, but I don't think that it's objectively worth it to give up the dark squared bishop. He loses a clear pawn. I think I have an idea of what white probably should do here. I'm not going to say it. I don't want to give away the right idea, but objectively white is pretty good. Guitar player, you're going to play a quick game? I don't want to be here till next week. That'll be the last game today. I like it when guitar player loses in like 15 moves with white. Not to be results oriented. White is a little better here. I'm not happy with queen c7. I kind of think I should have played the knight c5 right away I was talking about. Okay, this is vital to take back with the pawn. Now he sacks a pawn this way. This is a no-brainer because I really have to get him to give me his dark squared bishop. Taking with the pawn would be a very bad move. And he has very adequate compensation for the sacrificed pawn. But I think that black is okay here. Knight a6 may be perfectly good. Admittedly, I could play rook a7. Maybe the knight's path, if rook a7, knight d7, knight b6, is that really going to be any better than just doing knight a6, knight b4? Well, it probably can't hurt to play rook a7. It's a good defensive move anyway. And we can decide where we want to go, whether it's knight a6 or what have you. So I agree with white's pawn sacrifice. Earlier I thought the other option though is to play bishop g4. You know, here, bishop g4, activating the bad bishop is perfectly good. He stopped knight a6 for the moment. So I could play queen b6 and knight a6. Or just knight d7, which was the original plan. I don't see any reason not to play knight d7. What we'd like to do is get a piece on d4, but that doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. We can activate our bishop with bishop h6. Not really sure what that does. Actually, now it makes sense to some degree. Do gain a tempo. Watch out for tactics. Or maybe we can just migrate to the king side and start to create some threats over there. Speaking of tactics, we have double threat. Knight b6. So white missed this. There's a bishop hanging and a whole rook, and they can't protect each other. That could be a problem. Like black will win a full piece. Alright, fortunate there. I mean, white should have had adequate compensation for the pawn. Not a pretty game. Alright, guitar player, last game very quickly. I'm white. He's actually has left the game. He's back. Alright, dude. Let's go. White just lost the game of tic-tac-toe. We're all in the opposite colors, yeah. This is our last game today, guys. Alexandra's here a little late. Positional game. Rossalimo. Not a big expert for white, but I'm a little tired to do battle in the open Sicilian. That one Lowenthal I had with Geese was awkward. I want a strategic game. Knight to d4. A pretty rare move. Never really been considered to be a great line for black. Playable, I guess. Similar to the bird's defense in the Lopez. Now in the bird's defense, the Lopez, the normal plan is like castle quickly and play for f4. The pawn on d4 is a bit of a weakness. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to put the bishop. It's not a Lopez. I don't think the a4. It has some value, I guess, like he pinning the d pawn, but it seems more natural to go to either c4 or d3. Alright, this is arguably the most natural square for the bishop. I'm not a big fan of... I say that a lot, don't I? I've got to stop saying that because it's just too many. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm not a big fan of... Stop saying the same phrase. That phrase is out, man. Bishop c4. I don't like bishop on d3 Kopek type setups for white. I believe that that's really the way to play chess. So Pawn on d4 could be a weakness. He plays d5 right away. He's playing quickly. Thank you. Queen f3. Somehow queen f3 feels a little bit artificial. Not really sure. That surprised me. I didn't think that you'd want to put your bishop on such a good diagonal. Double edge move. Okay, he weakens his queen side a bit, but we'll try to get the bishop on a very active diagonal. But black will have to be careful if this bishop doesn't have access to like g4. I might be able to play early queen g4. You thank me for once for playing quickly. Knight f3 looks pretty modest, honestly. a4 on the queen side. Not sure how much what it really does, to be honest. Queen g4 is interesting. Hunting that pawn. Well, let's try it. Provocative. There's some argument this pawn is overextended. We're also on g7. So bishop c5 not an option there. Queen h4. Queen h4. The very subtle plan. Yeah, you have that move. Honestly, underestimated that. Now a4. f4. Knight f3. And black is fine here. f4 makes sense, but it is kind of risky. Does it really make sense though? I mean, f4, f5 makes sense, but it also weakens e3 and it takes pressure off of d4. The problem is that I can't play knight f3. Black's simply going to take. I mean, I can play it, but this is kind of double-edged. All right. I guess he doesn't have to take. Maybe he has another plan. I don't know. Bishop c5 is playable. No, I'm not in love with my position. I guess it's okay. I'm not a big fan of saying I'm not a big fan. It's getting really monotonous, and I realized I'm doing it. Alright. G takes F. Wonderful pawn structure. I feel like Joseph Henry Blackburn. I should probably play f4. Although it does block my bishop on c1, I'm not sure if I want to obstruct my own bishop just yet. Bishop on b3, it has some potential. I can also play a4 if need be. An interesting, imbalanced position has arisen. Wow, 98. Didn't really expect that. It doesn't mean it's not a good move. Solid way of defending. g7. His other ideas too. I'm usually very mindful of my pawn structure, so I don't often get a lot of double isolated f-pawn type of structures lately with white. I think a4 is a move I can play universally. It's going to be necessary when black plays a5. And hopefully in the endgame, his queenside pawns could be a little bit weak. I should keep my eye open for tactics. Our pieces are pretty active. And I think that might be a mistake by guitar player. Closing the position, he didn't want to do it, but I'm not sure if you should abandon the A file or not. Bishop h6 is possible. Let's throw it out there. Preventing g6. It's a weird way to prevent the move g6. I thought that black could have played g6 first. Maybe he was worried about f4, f5. And now queen e5. I don't see any threat necessarily here. He's defending e6. Some lines also he could run into danger on that line. Queen f6. Where is he going after this? All the white's pieces are extremely active. So much for the half-open A file that I was so happy about. We're on to more primitive thoughts. And now guitar player has to sack his queen. This looks lost for black. Bishop g5. And then sacking on e6, or what we're actually talking about is referred to as a sham sacrifice. So what isn't really a sacrifice, it's actually just an exchange, because clearly if he takes, he loses the material back. Bishop takes e6. Followed by bishop takes f7 check. It's pretty nasty. Guys, we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is another Blitz and Classical stream. 10 a.m. Central European summertime. It's very summer since it's like 30 degrees Celsius every day all over Europe. It's so refreshing. Okay, good D. Good D or bad D? See a knockout at the moment. Queen G3. The rook on C7 is defended. Alright, let's just hold on to this guy. I don't see a knockout blow here. Barring a knockout blow, we have queen for rook and knight. And a pawn. A lot of weaknesses. This. F7 is kind of tender, so pretty difficult to defend. Maybe he can do it. At least temporarily. It looks like black is holding on. How to make progress. Maybe that A file will be important after all. The universal word. We are in time pressure as always. Rook C6. Still can't find a way to break through. My queen gets nearly trapped on queen b8, knight d6, bishop d5. So how do we make progress, guys? This is getting really irritating. The f4. f4 probably can't hurt. I want my queen to have another square, ability to get to the white squares. There's going to be no immediate victory. Postpone the victory dance. It's going to be a little difficult to break this down. But I think eventually it should fall apart. Rook a6, that's not a problem. Not a problem. Focusing on white squares, f7, b5, b7, c6, all these squares. 3 pieces can cooperate. That's the magic defensive move that holds everything together. It's going to take some work to win this. Nice fortress. Man, it's incredibly annoying. Just an incredibly annoying position. Waiting move. How can I induce him to weaken his position somehow? Not easy to do. This is a little bit crazy. One way to win the d4 pawn, I suppose. Willing to sacrifice the exchange for a pawn. Kind of try to break it down. Yeah. All right. We have queen and bishop and 2 pawns for 2 rooks and a knight. Pretty weird material balance. Passed pawns would be good. Passed pawns we've got. Maybe just e6 here. It's not really enough. I need to unleash the d pawn. The unleashed. Oh man, I just sacrificed all my pawns. This is ridiculous. Pretty impressive play by black. I meant to defend my f pawn there. Sacrifice the other one. d6. Rook a2. Not really sure what's going on here. This is really a little too long for the stream. I shouldn't have played this game, guitar player. I'm not supposed to play a 20-minute game with me. Rook f1 check. That's a pretty good move to come up with. Impressive. What on earth is going on here? It's the wrong color rook pawn. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Oh, you're gonna take it. What? Guitar player passed on a draw. Passed on the draw there. After all that, he what did he do? He took on h3. This is a forced draw. Rookie 3-check. That was really interesting game, and that was not what I intended when I said I'll play one more game. It'll be a quick one. So it's really late, guys. Thanks for the stream. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central European Summer Time. Later.